we flipped the truck on the median, and I'm hanging there upside down for my seatbelt. And I look over, and she's just hanging upside down. You know, I can smell gas dripping. We're upside down. It's a snowstorm.
Welcome back to the Schooling Struggle podcast. My name is Todd. I am in Seattle, Washington, and we have Peter.
Coming to you live from Heartland, Vermont.
Very nice.
It's actually not live. It's recorded.
Oh, it's the last time Peter and I discussed Peter's life from the not from the womb, but a little bit after. So we're gonna try to pick up there and leave off, see what we can find in the next chapters that he endured over that time. So Peter, off to you with the college and beyond.
I feel like we got through your stuff in like 40 minutes, and you have way more and deeper stuff to share with your life journey than mine. And for some reason, my setup here is turning into 2 episodes. I think that's kind of oxymoronic, but I'm excited to share.
Maybe that means it's not as boring as you think.
Yeah, maybe.
I don't know.
So my life from after college through my 20s and 30s was, I think the best way for me to describe it was incredibly self-absorbed. And I don't know. I think that I thought that I was cooler than I really was. And I was really into chasing the things that made me happy. And a big jump that I've made from then till now is not so much that I'm seeking happiness, is that I'm seeking now meaning and purpose. And those are 2 very different things. But I had a really, really good time chasing happiness after my college year. So basically, I think what I'll do is I'll just share kind of a quick overview of where I've been and what I've been doing. And then you can kind of bounce back and ask me any questions or inquiries that you have about any of those particular experiences. I have mountains of stories to share from each of my kind of segments along the way. And you're welcome to just chime in and ask whatever you want to ask.
Sounds good.
As we go. Is that cool?
Let's do it. Take me on a trip.
Good. So May of 2000, I graduated from Western New England University as a sport management major. I was a business major, actually, not in education at all. And I actually, for the first time in my life, in starting college, I decided to try. I asked a lot of people before I went into college what they would do if they were to redo college. And almost everybody that I met said, I wish I would have tried harder. So I said, all right, I'm going to look back, and I'm not going to say that I wish I tried harder. So for 4 years, I tried really, really hard in school. And it was one of the first times in my life that I can remember like really feeling good about accomplishing something. And I graduated toward the top of my class. I had all the ribbons and stuff. The day I graduated college, I wore my cap and gown with a Wu-Tang t-shirt, black sweatpants, and black Nike Air Force Ones on the day that I graduated. And I shaved my head with a razor for the first time in my life, caught my parents off guard on graduation day. So my mom loved it, and my dad thought I was completely out of my mind. So I take all the money that I've made for like during my time in college, like working summers and stuff, and a little extra money that people had given me as a graduation gift. And my buddies and I buy a 1970 RV, and we drive across the United States for 2 months. I think we went to 35 states, and we just wanted to see the country. We wanted to see the major cities, the major landmarks, a lot of the stuff that you hear about growing up in the United States. We went and saw it, and we did it. I had an internship lined up for when I got back from that, which was to work at Disney World. As a little kid, one of my life goals was to always, at some point, I want to work at Disney World. So I actually got a job down at Disney World for 6 months. They call it an internship, but it's really just kind of like really cheap labor for the company. And I was a lifeguard at a water park down in Disney World, Blizzard Beach Water Park. And I lived in a complex with 2,000 kids between the ages of 18 and 21. It was epic. It was incredible. And while down there, I met a girl from Virginia. And then I came back home and lived with my parents, and I was a substitute teacher. And I would go and sit at the table with the kids instead of go to the the teacher's lounge, and
Yeah.
kids would be like, first time anyone ever called me Mr. D in my life, I was always just Pete. And they're like, yo, you're so cool. You're going to become a teacher? I'm like, no, I'm absolutely never going to become a teacher. My mom was worked in schools for a good portion of our life. And I just thought I'll never be a teacher, which is funny. So I did that, and then I ended up getting a job managing a swimming pool in the Boston area. So I was the assistant manager at this pool in Lexington, Massachusetts, and I lived with my amazing cousin Lori and her family, and I managed this swimming pool. And after the swimming pool, I moved down to Richmond, Virginia, and lived with the girl that I was dating at the time. Her name was Martha, and I spent a year down there. And after a year in Virginia, I decided to come back because I really, really missed the winters. I missed snowboarding. I missed my family. And we've remained great friends, but the distance was too much for either of us. She wasn't super interested in moving to New England, and I wasn't going to stay in Virginia. So I came home, and a lot of people have been asking me at that point when I'm going to start my life, or when I'm going to quote unquote join the real world. As you know from previous episodes, my father was a businessman, and a lot of people kind of in my family, I thought, expected me to follow in his footsteps. So I said, you know what, before I join the real world, I'm just going to go, and I'd saved up money through the summer working at the pool, and I'm going to go to Europe, and I'm going to backpack around Europe for a couple months. So I did that. I'd never really done a whole lot of travel, and just kind of bought a round trip ticket to London, and over the course of 2 months, just traveled all throughout Western Europe, planes, trains, and automobiles, illegally hopping on and off trains, a loaf of bread and a salami, all I ate all day with water. Like, I did Europe on less than $40 a day. And that included all my travel, entertainment, food, accommodation, the whole deal. So I'm a master at traveling on a shoestring. So I get back from that, and my world has completely shifted at this point. Like, I went from like, oh yeah, I'm probably going to get into business. I have a business degree. I graduated summa cum laude. And I come back and I'm like, yeah, man, the only thing you need in this world is what you can fit in a backpack. Like, you don't need any things. You don't need physical items. And
World traveler.
So I said to myself, yeah, Pete, what is it you really want to do, man? And I was like, I just want to snowboard. So I emailed a bunch of resorts up in Vermont, and I came up, and within an hour I had a job. I found a place to stay, and Vermont became my home for the winter. So now we're talking, so I went to Europe, lived in Virginia. So now we're talking winter 2003. A bunch of my high school buddies moved to California at the time, and the ski season ends, and I move out to San Diego to stay with my buddies and sleep on their couch for a while. Taught myself how to surf. I remember I went out there with $300 and was living off like $5-6 a day.
You should have another podcast called Shoestring Episodes.
People like, yeah. So I did San Diego, and then for the next 4 years, I came up to Vermont for the winters and taught snowboarding 7 days a week. And I went to Lexington, Massachusetts, which is a suburb just outside of Boston, and I managed this swimming pool. And over the course of the time, I did quite a bit of traveling. I did New Zealand, Australia, I did Puerto Rico. I went back to San Diego. I had a friend whose family owned a decent-sized construction company in the town where I grew up. So in between the pool and the trips and the winter, I'd lay pavement. So I worked a lot of construction. I waited tables on the side. Went out to Colorado and snowboarded out there. Like, once the season would end here, you had another month there. So I'd go out to Colorado and snowboard there. And at the time, the kids that I taught snowboarding and swimming to, their parents would say, so when you're done teaching this, what are you going to do? I'm like, I don't know. And they're like, well, have you ever thought about becoming a teacher? I'm like, no, not really. And they're like, well, you're pretty good with my kids. You should think about it. So one day I'm teaching snowboarding, and there's this lady correcting papers in the lodge. I didn't know who she was. I just walked up to her. I said, so, excuse me, ma'am, are you a teacher? She goes, yeah. And I go, would you tell me about it? She goes, sure. I said, do you like it? She goes, oh my gosh, I love it. I said, what grade do you teach? She goes, third. So I said, if you don't mind. And I sat down next to her, and just picked her brain about what it's like to be a teacher, all this stuff. And she's like, in fact, there's this program that you can actually get certified to become a teacher. It's a 1-year kind of like intense program to become licensed as a teacher in Vermont, New Hampshire. So I, like, on a whim, I just applied to this program, and I got in. And the next thing I knew, I was doing my student teaching. But I've been a PE teacher for 16 years, but my initial license was not for physical education. It was for K-6 reading, writing, and math. And halfway through the program, I'm like, I love working with these kids, but teaching reading, writing, and math is just not it's not what I don't feel like it was my life calling. But I'm like, but I already started this program. I'm going to see it through. I always finish what I start. So I finished the year, and I was just getting ready to move out to Colorado with my high school buddies and do this ski bum thing. And the principal to my school was like, hey, did you know the PE teacher is retiring? I said, yeah, but I can't apply for the job because I don't have the certification. And she kind of gave me a wink and a nod. She's like, I think you should apply. And I applied, and I got the job. 4 days a week, $24,500 a year salary when I first started working there. And I was like, I'll do this for 2 years and then I'll move out west just so I have a little bit of work experience. I can go out there, maybe become a teacher. I don't really know. And during that time, I met my wife, Jen, who at the time was just another teacher at the school. And that's kind of how I viewed her, as just a colleague. And one day she said, hey, there's this thing called Old School PE where a bunch of adults get together on Friday and Saturday nights and they play like all the games that we're not allowed to play in school anymore, like dodgeballs with the rubber balls and like, the floor hockey where you're allowed to check. Exactly. So we were on our way to that in my my Ford Ranger, and we were going down Interstate 89 one night on the way to Old School PE, and I hit a patch of ice and we flipped the truck on the median, and I'm hanging there upside down from my seatbelt in my truck. And I look over and she's just hanging upside down. I can smell gas dripping. We're upside down. It's a snowstorm. And I'm like, you all right? She's like, yeah, I think so. And we hit our seatbelts and drop down and get out of the truck. And next thing you know, there's ambulances and fire trucks and everything there. And she was just so chill during that entire experience. She was probably in shock because when you roll over in a car, but I just couldn't believe how calm she was. She was amazing. So that was kind of the first time that I looked at Jen other than just a friend. And I apologized to her dad for almost killing his daughter, and he accepted my apology, and we started hanging out after that. And I was like, wow, there's something to this girl. And so
can we pause right there for a minute? I want for the viewers, I want them to know what I'm seeing, because to watch somebody's face light up when they talk about their significant other is something that's very.
Man, she's the best.
Oh yeah,
she's
totally.
the best.
So
yeah, she's amazing. When I asked her to marry me, I didn't realize it was going to be this good.
That's awesome.
Being married to her is amazing.
Congratulations.
And so the summer after so one thing that I skipped was the summer before we started dating. That summer was after the first year of my first year of teaching. I went out to Alaska and I fished for salmon commercially for the entire summer. And that was quite an experience. We can talk about that if you want. So then I get back, Jen and I started dating, and that following summer, I already had plans to ride my bicycle across the United States. So on the last day of school, I flew to San Diego. I'd already shipped my bike out there. And my buddy and I rode our bicycles from San Diego to Boston, which was 4,400 miles. We did it in 53 days. But unbeknownst to me, this girl surprised me on my 30th birthday in the middle of Nowheresville, Kansas, and just showed up out of nowhere. She flew to Colorado, rented a car, and drove to Kansas to surprise me on my birthday. So we spent a day together in Kansas, and then we kept riding, and she went to go visit a friend. So 2008 was the bike ride. Jen and I got married after that, and then we moved to Vietnam, and we taught in Vietnam together for a year. I taught kindergarten, first and second grade to kids from all over the world, kids from Europe, kids from Asia, Japanese kids, Vietnamese kids, Danish kids, Korean kids. Yeah, at an international school. So I taught grades K1, 2, and Jen taught grades 3, 4, 5, 6. I had 9 kids in my class, and she had about the same. And then there was another couple who taught middle school and high school. So we spent a year in Vietnam. That was just, oh man, so amazing for our relationship in so many ways, because we were just kind of in it together. And Vietnam was wild. And the saying goes, for expats in Vietnam, 1 year in Vietnam is like 4 years anywhere else. It's just nobody spoke English where we lived, right in a big city. It was it was amazing. Jen also always was quoted as saying, "It wasn't what we wanted, but it was what we needed." So the two of us just became forged in steel together over there, like having to navigate our days and our lives and going to the grocery store and all this stuff. So we had a really, really, really tight bond. It was there that we decided that having a child was something we were both interested in, which wasn't the case for while we were dating and engaged. We thought we probably wouldn't have kids, and then the biological thing switched and we both wanted to have kids. So we came home and started to make efforts to have a child, and that didn't work for 2 years, and we started the adoption process. And just before we wrote the first big check, we found out that Jen was pregnant, and we didn't do any type of fertility or anything like that. And so our daughter's kind of our Christmas miracle. We found right around Christmas time that Jen was pregnant, and LJ was born in 2015, and here we are now. She's first grader at 6 years old, and I could not be more grateful. I have the most amazing wife and daughter that life could ever bring to me. So lots of other stuff along the way. My fitness, I went through a bunch of different evolutions of fitness. I went through a stage where I was in biking shape when I rode across the United States. We did 142 miles in a day. It was our biggest day there. Then I got into racing 5Ks, and then I got into Spartan races, and then I got into CrossFit. And now I do kind of a mishmash of all of them, and I just love it. I love it. I taught at the Heartland School, kindergarten through 8th for 12 years, and then switched over to Hartford High School to build a fitness program there. And this is midway through my 4th year at Hartford teaching high school. And I absolutely love teaching high school. So good. Another fun fact about me, when I moved to Virginia, I drove through New York City and Washington, D.C. September 10th, the day before the 9/11 attacks. So, that's kind of the short version of where I've been and what I've been up to for the last bunch of years. I think over the course of since graduating from college, now I've been to close to 30 countries, and I have all but 4 states till I get all 50 states. So traveling was a big part. I believe that traveling is one of the best ways that we can educate ourselves, and I love to travel.
Wow. There's a lot there. You made it sound like, it's just 15, 20 years. That's a lot. What I pulled out of that, I pulled out a lot of themes there. Can you tell me some more about what did trying look like in college, and how did that differ from where you felt like you didn't try before?
So in high school, anytime I got something back that was graded, if it was above a 69, that meant it was a 70, and a C was good enough for me. My parents never put pressure on us for grades, so there was never that. And I was just like, as long as I get a 70, I'm good. I didn't read books in high school. I didn't really commit to taking pride in any of my work. I didn't have a goal other than I was going to graduate high school. I only applied to one college and did not get in, University of Massachusetts. When I found out that I didn't get in, it kind of sent me back to the drawing board of what I'm going to do about college, and that kind of turned into schools with rolling admissions. And I was accepted at Western New England, and I actually had a blast there. I had awesome 4 years. So it's funny, right now I'm seeing some of my students who are seniors that are not getting into their school of their choice, and they're just absolutely devastated. And I want to say to them, this could be the best thing that ever happened to you, because that's part of my story. And then when I got to school, my dad said, "I'm going to help you pay for school." He said, "But I'm not going to help you. I'm not going to help you pay if you get below a 3.0. And I didn't know what I didn't know what that equated to. Like, I didn't know if that was an A or a D plus. I had no idea. So I was like, well, I got to make sure I get above this number, whatever it is. So my first semester in college, I made a routine and I committed to my studies. And at night, my buddies and I would all go to dinner at the dining hall. And then from there, they'd all go back to the rooms and start to party. And I would go to the library and I would stay at the library until my work was done. And then I'd go back and hang out with them till the wee hours of the morning. And that was also the time in my life when I first started working out as well. When I first went to the gym, I just kind of followed my buddies into the gym, because if I didn't go with them, I'd just be sitting in my room by myself. So I was like, I guess, and I just went and stood in the corner and literally watched these big football players lift weights. So intimidated. I could not bench press a 45-pound bar 10 times when I was a freshman in college. I was 18 years old, 120 pounds, and I couldn't bench 45 pounds 10 times. And I just kind of kept going to the gym with my friends. They started teaching me stuff, and I stuck to my studies. And that first report card came in, and I had 5 A's and an A minus. I think that's like a 3.94 or something like that. And I was like, holy crap, I can do this. And then I really wanted to reverse the stereotype. The way I dressed, hip hop was the only music I listened to, and I dressed that way. And back in the 90s, it was big baggy pants with a hat on crooked and batting gloves and my Wu-Tang t-shirts. And I wanted to be the kid in the class that people thought wasn't going to do well and crush it. And I'll never forget my senior year. I walked into this 400 level class, and this teacher spent the first half hour talking about how the class is the most difficult class we'll ever take in college. Nobody ever gets A's in this class, and just be prepared to work your butt off and barely pass. And at the end of the first class, I walked up to the teacher. I introduced myself, said, hi, I'd just like to introduce you. My name is Peter Driscoll. I looked her dead in the eye. I said, and I will get an A in your class. And I walked away. And at the end of the semester, she said, I'd like to make an announcement. Somebody got an A in this class, and that's Peter Driscoll. And that was a big win for me.
Way to Wu-Tang that. It would have been better if you had a microphone. You just dropped it. Just drop the mic right there. It would be great.
My will to be competitive has served me very well in some aspects of my life, and it's really bit me hard in others. But my will to be competitive in college, to get a good GPA was, I guess, good. But really, I mean, I don't know. I believe if you're willing to work hard and treat people well, you can do anything you want in this world, regardless of what your grades are anywhere. And the grades in college, they are what they are. Like, I'm doing what I love, and I think I'd be doing this either way, whether I got good grades or not. But that was a little self-affirmation for me. Like, if I try to achieve something, then I can actually do it. And that's the first time that I remember really feeling that way. And then the fitness piece was kind of along with it. And then when school ended, the fitness piece for me ramped up big time. A big part of it was just ego. I was a lifeguard by a pool, and I wanted to be the guy that was 3% body fat and was comfortable walking around the pool looking cool. And so fitness kind of sustained me investing in myself and feeling good about my time and energy that I invested into myself.
Yeah, it sounds like, given that recount, it sounds like you kind of learned a way, and I don't know where along that line it was, or even if there was. I remember you asked me one time if there was like a trigger or a switch, and I couldn't put my finger on it. I'm curious to know if you can, but it sounds to me like you discovered what worked well for you, and then you started stacking those up because they each reinforced another piece of it or added some momentum to it. Is that something that you always had carried with you? Or is that just something like you learned incrementally through those processes, and then finally we're like, oh, this is what works. This is what I'm going to rely on for the rest of my hardships or struggles.
Yeah, probably the latter of your statements or your suggestions right there. Yeah, I just think that, man, it's hard for me to articulate it because at the time I don't even think I recognized what I was doing. It just felt good at the time. Whether the motivation was to prove people wrong or to show myself that I could do it. I don't actually know what my motivation was then, other than I felt empowered when I could spend time and energy and do something that made me feel good. And that there was definitely an extrinsic piece there where people who knew me thought that what I was doing was a cool, respectable thing. And that was a big piece of it. I think all those trips and all the stuff that I just shared with you, I really only was kind of seeking happiness for myself, so I was self-absorbed, but I was also definitely trying to gain the acceptance of others. And I don't know. I don't think until I started to become a teacher and started to become a parent and started to kind of see the value in helping others that a lot of the stuff that I did was motivated more intrinsically than extrinsically.
Yeah, I feel like looking from my vantage is clearly from the outside in, but it seems like, and I've told you this before, and it keeps coming up, is like, it seems like that moment in high school that you felt like disowned or shunned or whatever it was, like kind of launched a ship of sorts in that, like, it's almost like challenge accepted, or like, oh, I see. We'll see what happens. And then you kind of built that bravado on top of an event. I don't know if that's fair to say, but that's what it appears. That's how it looks. One thing I heard you say, or one thing I wrote down where you're talking about the time you spent between San Diego and Massachusetts, I believe, where you were working seasonally for those 4 years. So you would go do one thing, do the other. I found it very interesting that all of the stories that you had shared up until that point culminated with a curiosity in the face of expectation. So like all these other people were like, oh, when are you going to come back to real life? It's time to take on your dad's reins. And you're just like, I don't know. But even given that, like it seemed like you had been curious in learning and exploring all these other parts. And so I guess I'm driving to the question of, was there like when you finally, I guess you didn't really finally settle down in the way people expected you to? And was that something that you had was there a struggle in selling that, or was it just because you worked so hard and you attained those things that they kind of put as those expectations, you won that? You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think almost like I shared the story in the last episode about how I decided I wasn't going to drink, and decided I wasn't going to drink alcohol, and I kind of had to defend myself until people saw that that's just who I was, and then they accepted that. It was much like that with my life path as well. So my father's rule was we could do anything we want as long as we didn't ask him for money. And he taught me at a very young age that it's important to spend less than you make. It sounds like such a simple concept, right? But a very difficult thing for many people in our culture. So I lived out of the back of my truck. I brushed my teeth at Walmart. I did all these, slept in parking lots, all these things so that I could continue to chase the life that I was desiring. What I was desiring was just this life of adventure and wanderlust. And okay, I persevered through that challenge. What's the next one that I can put on myself? And put myself in sketchy situations in European cities and South American places, stuff like that. So I don't know if I'm answering your question, but once the people around me knew this is who Pete is, this is what he does, I felt like I really started to garner a lot of respect of people that are like, all right, like I'm done asking you when you're going into the real world, because this is your real world. And that's what I'd say to people. I was like, yeah, teaching snowboarding from the first day in November to the last day in April, every single day for 100 days in a row is my real world. And there's nothing else I'd rather have. And looking back on my life, I wouldn't trade any of that for retirement or career advancement, none of it. Like those life lessons were just incredible. And, it set me up to really be passionate about chasing your heart and doing what you love in life. Was that even close to answering what you were
absolutely.
asking?
I think, yeah, I mean, it totally is. And it sounds like you had, you probably still do, but you definitely felt that you did then, like a supportive, I mean, there's only one expectation, right? Like your dad's like, you do anything you want, but don't ask me for money. I mean, that's pretty cut and dry, but at the same time,
yeah,
you
my
knew
mom's
what you
like, you
can
can do
get.
anything. My mom's like, you can do anything you want as long as you don't fall in love in a foreign country and stay there. Those are the two rules.
Right.
So,
yeah. That's interesting. Because a lot of people,
yeah.
I don't think a lot of people can boil it down to, I know I can truly do whatever I want as long as these criteria are met. And it sounds like that's kind of been a thing.
And, I think there's a very short time in a human being's life where they're old enough to do whatever they want and they're young enough to do whatever they want.
I agree with that.
And I rode that till it bucked me off. Like some people take a gap year. Like I did that for a long time. Yeah. And I just knew so many people that were doing things they didn't want to do. So people would say like, oh, what's your motivation for doing all these trips and doing all these adventures and riding your bike cross country and living in a fishing shack in Alaska and sleeping in your truck? And I was like, I just don't want to do what I don't want to do. Right? How simple does that sound? But how many people do stuff every day that they don't want to do? And I don't at the time I took it for granted. I don't for a second now take it for granted that I had the privilege and the opportunity to do this, right? Like I had the privilege to go to college and I had the opportunity and I was given so many things that many people don't have. And I'm trying to be as grateful and and appreciate that as much as I can. But at the same time, like we're all dealt a deck of hand. What am I trying to say? We're all dealt a hand of cards. Yeah. From the deck.
You almost had it.
And what we do with that is up to us, regardless of what those cards are. And that's what I try to preach to my students is we have to do life. We can't let life do us. What does that mean to you? It means something very different from this person than it does to this person, different to me. You know how people say, things are really rough right now, but they're going to get better. Like I am trying to take the mindset that things are really good right now, and at some point they're going to get worse. So I have to do my best to appreciate them now.
Well, be careful, because what you think about is what you're going to get. So don't ponder on that very much. One thing that also kind of carried through there, and it goes to, I think, to your point of, I can't remember how you said it, but something along the lines of, you've been very privileged and you've been very, I think you and I kind of feel the same about that thing, but from different angles. And what I wanted to share was that your story to me, like, oh, I spent years in Vietnam teaching these kids that, may have not learned English, or, I spent all this time, giving of myself for others, for them to become better, like I'm teaching snowboarding, blah, blah, blah. And sure, there's probably, there's probably compensation in that, right? But I think that at the base level, it goes to you're experiencing the other people's, or meeting other people in a way that they can better themselves. And so, like, I feel like you had skin in the game all along, and it wasn't just that you got lucky, or it wasn't just that sure, you were privileged a bit, but who isn't? But it's one of those things that shouldn't take away from that, right? Like,
yeah. And I do remember very, very vividly, deeply, deeply caring about the progress of anybody that I worked with. And I deeply cared about if these kids that I taught to swim could learn how to swim. And I took a lot of pride in when the lesson ended and they went up to the parent and the parent said, how'd it go? That they said it went really well. Like that was important to me more than, the money or getting the person back for their lesson, or, however you try to sell it. And I've always felt deeply about what other people thought about their experiences in my presence. And that's an important thing for me. And, I think I get a lot of that from my mother. My mother's at a party and there's 100 people there, 99 are having the time of their lives, and one's having a tough night. My mom will carry that burden. And I'm that way, definitely that way with the classes, 20 students in front of me. If one of them's having an off day, like I'll give that person uber attention, and maybe even to the detriment of the teaching of the other 19. But the progress of the people that I'm working with is very, very important to me, and it always has. And I can remember being like, man, it's weird. Like my buddies that are snowboard instructors, they just wake up in the morning and come. They don't care if people learn how to snowboard. They just do it because they do it. And I was like, no, I really care if this person learns how to do this thing.
No, that's so interesting. There's definitely something underneath there. I don't know where. Obviously the apples don't fall far from the tree. So if you got that from your mom, that's one thing. But
her mother had a series of mental issues and mental challenges. And my mom would tell me that, like, back in the day, like she had, I don't know, whatever we'd call it now, anxiety or depression. And she was hooked up to the shock treatment. So they're like literally electrocuting different parts of her brain, thinking at the time, I don't know when it was, that it was a healthy thing. And my mom said it destroyed her mother. So my mom had a interesting relationship with her mom, and my dad, his parents were not really available for him.
Interesting. Yeah, I think that at least a lot of my experience and a lot of the people I talk to, is like there's that jump of generational gaps, right? Like where, like I think I told you about my grandma, right? Like she'd saved everything because she came through the Depression, but like my mom almost went to the other side of that because she had observed so much of that it seemed ridiculous. Because I remember when my grandma died, she was like, now we have to go through all this stuff because she's been saving this stuff forever, right? And so it became like this, this task. But
I find that fascinating. I think like we decide at some point in our life, like this thing about my parents drove me so crazy that come hell or high water, I will not be that or do that. Yeah. Right? So like my father was manic about us not playing any type of ball in the house. We couldn't toss a football around. Like every time we had a ball, it had to be outside. So I told him, when I own my own house, I'm going to allow my kid to play the ball wherever they want in the house. They can skateboard in the house. They can do all the stuff that you didn't allow me to do. And even now I send him all the time. I send him videos through my mom's phone, because he doesn't have one, of my daughter riding her bike in the house and playing basketball in the house and throwing stuff around the house. And I'm like, ball in the house. It's good. Right. Because I decided that was not going to be me. However, I hear my father's voice in my voice all the time. getting upset with my daughter because she got water on the floor when she's taking a bath, like all these types of things. So like, I think we end up like our parents in many ways, except for those few ways that we said, we're not going to follow that suit.
That's interesting. Yeah.
And my mom's house burned down when she was 13. So she lost everything. So my mom saves everything. And I was like, I'm not going to save everything. Like that's one of the things. My mom has all these amazing traits. She's super hands-on, loving, the best emotional support. Like she's just an incredible human being. And hopefully I've taken on some of those traits, but like, I don't want to keep stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
You pack pretty light then on a shoestring budget.
Man.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's another thing. Like, I feel that a lot of those years in my 20s, like the shoestring, $40 a week on food, all the time that I was snowboarding and teaching swimming, like I learned how to live on the nothing. And I think that's a really, really cool thing to do. And I think instead of always kind of pushing forward and having more stuff and work, consume, if we each do a little less of each, we'll be much happier human beings. And that was really helpful for me. And I think if you take something away, when you get that thing back, it's a really, really awesome, enjoyable thing versus getting something for the first time, right? So let me give you an example. A piece of clothing that I really, really want, right? And I save up my money and I buy the piece of clothing. However, if I go on like a 6-week hike and I don't take a shower for 6 weeks, and that shower after 6 weeks that I've denied myself, that shower is going to be way more enjoyable. I'm going to appreciate it so much more than that piece of clothing that I'm going to buy, right? So if we take stuff away from ourselves and kind of set back, when we come back to those things, we appreciate them with a much higher level of gratitude than when we got it, then we're constantly kind of moving up the ladder, so to speak. That makes a lot of sense in my head. I don't know if I articulated that the way that I was hoping, but delayed gratification is such a huge, important skill to be able to have to live a life with purpose and fulfillment.
Interesting. Have you ever heard of the marshmallow test?
Oh yeah, I know all about that.
Yeah. Kind of in the same vein, right? Like if you can hold on, it's going to be so much more worth it. Yeah.
If you don't know the marshmallow test, Google it.
Yeah, I'll put a link in the show notes. I did a thing recently that you don't know about. I reached out to your wife to find out about a Christmas gift or a gift you would enjoy for Christmas, and she told me. She said, we don't really focus on items. We focus more on experiences. And so that just goes exactly with what you just said. Like the shower it's so perfect because who wants a new shirt to put over your funky body if you just take the shower and just love it. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah. We switched to doing experiences for gifts because we could share that together versus just putting another thing inside the house.
Yeah. I mean, every year I go to get my snowboards out of the garage and I go up I have a attic loft in my garage and there's so much stuff up there. And I'm just like, I haven't seen half this stuff for like 5 years. Like, why do I keep this stuff? And maybe I should talk to your mom about that. How do I get rid of this?
Does this mean that for Christmas, you and I are going to have an experience?
I don't know. I haven't figured it out yet, but I thought that was too perfect timing to just leave that one out. I believe in synchronicity.
I know a cool town in Kansas if you want to ever meet out there.
Don't you totally meet me halfway because I swear I will do it. I do things like that all the time. Anyways.
Man, this went by fast.
Yeah,
holy
time
cow.
flies when you're talking.
So good.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah. Well,
cool.
That was great. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, I think it's going to lead to some really cool discussions. Me knowing your story, you knowing mine, the listeners knowing both of ours now. Yeah. It's awesome.
Cool.
So thanks for picking my brain and taking me for a walk down my own memory lane.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing.
All right. Thanks for listening, y'all. If you still are, we appreciate your ears. We appreciate your attention. And with that said, we are out.
Oh, yeah.
Peace.
See ya. Happy holidays, everyone.